Action beats perfection because waiting for the right moment often means waiting forever. Most people dream of speaking fluent English, writing confidently, or expressing themselves without hesitation, but they spend years preparing instead of doing. They buy new grammar books, download vocabulary apps, and make study plans that look perfect on paper, yet they rarely take the step of using English in real situations. This is where the real difference begins. The truth is, perfection is an illusion. It's a moving target that keeps you chasing but never lets you arrive. When you aim for perfection, you focus on doing everything flawlessly, which only leads to fear, hesitation, and endless preparation. But when you take action, even imperfectly, you start learning faster than you ever imagined. Action is powerful because it teaches you through experience, not just theory. You can spend weeks memorizing English grammar rules, but you'll never truly master them until you use them in a real sentence, speak them out loud, and realize how they sound in conversation. The same goes for pronunciation. You can watch hundreds of tutorials about accent and intonation, but until you actually speak and listen to yourself, your knowledge stays locked inside your head. Learning a language is not about knowing everything, it's about using what you already know. Every word you say, every sentence you build, and every mistake you make is a step toward fluency. When you take action, you start building real confidence. Many learners believe they need confidence before they can speak, but confidence doesn't come first, it's the result of doing. The more you use English, the more comfortable you become. You learn to express your thoughts naturally, to find words faster, and to trust yourself even when you don't know everything. This habit of action changes how your brain works. Instead of thinking, "What if I'm wrong?" you begin to think, "How can I say this better next time?" That shift is what turns a learner into a speaker. Action also breaks the mental barriers that perfection creates. When you act, you stop overthinking. You stop comparing yourself to others and start focusing on your own progress. You realize that everyone who is fluent today was once a beginner who made countless mistakes. They didn't wait until they were ready, they became ready by taking action. Perfectionists, on the other hand, stay stuck because they're afraid of being judged or making errors. But language learning thrives on errors. Every mistake shows you what to improve. The faster you make them, the faster you learn. Moreover, action creates momentum. When you do something regularly, like speaking a few minutes of English every day or writing a short journal entry, it becomes a part of your life. This daily movement builds consistency, and consistency builds fluency. You start noticing that what once felt difficult now feels natural. You discover that your vocabulary grows not from studying lists, but from using words in real context. Each small action accumulates, forming a foundation that no amount of theoretical study could ever replace. Consistency builds confidence because repetition strengthens both skill and memory. When you practice English every day, even for a short time, you train your brain to think and respond in the language naturally. It's like exercising a muscle. The more often you use it, the stronger it becomes. Many learners believe they need long study sessions once or twice a week, but language doesn't grow in sudden bursts, it grows through small, repeated actions. A few minutes of daily practice has more power than hours of irregular study because it keeps your mind connected to the language. You start to internalize patterns, sounds, and structures without forcing yourself to memorize them. Consistency is what transforms learning from a task into a habit. At first, practicing English might feel like an effort. You have to remind yourself to study, to speak, to read. But after weeks of repetition, it becomes part of your daily rhythm, as natural as brushing your teeth or checking your phone. That regular exposure is what allows your brain to absorb new information more efficiently. The moments may seem small, reading a short article, listening to a podcast, writing a paragraph, but each moment adds another layer of understanding. With time, those layers build confidence, and confidence fuels even more consistency. It becomes a positive cycle. The more you practice, the more capable you feel, the more capable you feel, the more you want to practice. When you are consistent, you also begin to notice real progress, even if it's slow. You might not feel fluent after a week, but after a month of steady effort, you realize that words come faster, sentences sound smoother, and understanding feels easier. This gradual improvement motivates you to keep going. It's the small, unseen progress that matters most. Many people quit because they don't notice results right away. But language learning is not about instant transformation, it's about accumulation. Every single day of practice leaves a mark. Skipping days, on the other hand, weakens the rhythm, forcing you to restart again and again. That's why consistency is more valuable than intensity. It keeps your momentum alive. Confidence in English doesn't come from perfection, it comes from familiarity. When you hear words repeatedly, when you see phrases used in different contexts, when you use the same structures often, they start to feel like a part of you. You don't have to think about them. They simply appear when you need them. That's the result of consistent exposure. Your brain begins to recognize patterns automatically, reducing hesitation and fear. Each consistent moment of practice removes a small piece of doubt. Slowly, the voice in your head that says, "Well, I can't speak English well," becomes, "I can try." And eventually, "I can do this." Consistency also teaches patience. You learn to trust the process instead of chasing shortcuts. There will be days when you feel stuck, tired, or unmotivated, But showing up anyway strengthens your discipline. It proves that you can rely on yourself, that your progress doesn't depend on perfect conditions. The act of showing up daily, no matter how small the effort, builds a deep sense of confidence that no external praise can replace. The fear of failure keeps you stuck because it creates an invisible wall between your goals and your actions. Many people dream of speaking fluent English, of holding conversations with ease, of writing clearly and confidently, yet they hesitate to take the first step. The reason is not lack of ability or intelligence, it's fear. Fear whispers that you might make mistakes, that others might laugh, that you might not be good enough. This fear grows louder each time you avoid speaking, each time you stay silent even when you know the answer. Over time, it becomes a habit, and that habit builds a cage that keeps you from growing. The truth is that everyone who learns anything new faces failure at some point. The difference between those who progress and those who stay stuck lies in how they respond to it. When you fear failure, you start focusing more on avoiding mistakes than on learning. You overthink every word before speaking, you translate everything in your head, and you lose the natural flow of communication. You might know what you want to say, but fear stops the words from leaving your mouth. This constant self-criticism kills confidence. The irony is that in trying to be perfect, you stop yourself from improving. Learning a language is messy. It involves mispronunciations, grammatical errors, and moments of confusion. These moments are not proof of failure. They are the very steps that lead to success. Each mistake teaches you something valuable, a new way to form a sentence, a clearer pronunciation, or a better understanding of how the language works. The fear of failure also keeps you comparing yourself to others. You see people who speak fluently and think they are naturally talented or smarter. You forget that they, too, struggled once, made countless mistakes, and learned through trial and error. No one starts fluent. Fluency is built through courage and repetition. The people you admire have failed more times than you have even tried. They didn't allow embarrassment to stop them. They used their mistakes as lessons rather than evidence of incompetence. The sooner you accept that failure is part of learning, the faster you progress. Fear also distorts your perception of progress. When you're afraid, every small error feels like a disaster. You overlook how far you've come because your mind focuses only on what's wrong. This prevents you from recognizing success, no matter how small. But progress in English comes in stages. Understanding one new phrase, remembering a grammar rule, or successfully finishing a short conversation. When you let fear dominate, you ignore these victories and convince yourself you're not improving, even when you are. Facing failure directly changes everything. Once you allow yourself to make mistakes, the pressure disappears. You start speaking more freely, experimenting with words, and expressing your ideas without fear of judgment. You learn faster because you're not blocking your own growth. Failure, instead of being an enemy, becomes a teacher. Each incorrect word becomes a lesson, each awkward conversation a step toward fluency. The only real failure is giving in to fear and never trying at all. Start before you're ready, because waiting for the perfect moment often means you will never begin. Many people tell themselves they will start speaking English once they know more vocabulary, once they finish a certain course, or once they feel more confident. But that day rarely comes. The feeling of readiness is not something that appears out of nowhere. It's something that grows through experience. When you take action before you feel fully prepared, you give yourself the chance to learn in real situations. The truth is, no one ever feels completely ready for anything important. Whether it's learning a language, starting a new job, or speaking in front of others, readiness is built through doing, not waiting. Starting before you're ready helps you overcome the fear of imperfection. When you act, even without complete knowledge, you expose yourself to the real rhythm and emotion of English. You begin to hear how words connect, how sentences flow, and how meaning changes through tone and expression. Reading textbooks and watching lessons can prepare you mentally, but true understanding only comes through practice. By starting early, you allow yourself to make mistakes while you're still learning, which makes those mistakes valuable. Each one becomes a lesson that builds skill and confidence. The people who achieve fluency are not the ones who waited until they were perfect. They are the ones who started when they were uncertain but willing to grow. When you start before you're ready, you also train your brain to adapt. Every conversation, every attempt at writing or listening becomes a mini test that helps your mind adjust to real English. You begin to think faster, react naturally, and find words more easily. This happens because your brain learns best through challenge. When you push yourself slightly outside your comfort zone, you create new pathways for learning. If you always stay in the safe zone, you might feel comfortable, but you won't progress. Taking small risks like speaking to a native speaker, joining an English group, or recording your own voice gives your brain the signal to grow stronger. Waiting for readiness often hides a deeper problem: fear of failure or judgment. You may tell yourself that you are preparing, but in reality, you are protecting yourself from embarrassment. Yet, every fluent speaker has gone through the stage of sounding unsure, making grammatical errors, and using the wrong words. What separates them from those who remain stuck is that they accepted the discomfort and kept going. They understood that growth is messy, and that imperfection is part of progress. The moment you stop waiting for approval or perfect conditions, you begin to learn freely. Starting before you're ready also builds courage, a quality far more important than talent. Each time you take action without feeling fully prepared, you prove to yourself that you can handle uncertainty. That courage spills into every part of your learning journey. You stop hesitating and start doing. You write that essay, you speak in that meeting, you share your ideas without worrying about how perfect they sound. You realize that progress comes not from knowing everything first, but from daring to begin. Environment shapes success because the surroundings you live and learn in have a direct impact on how your mind absorbs and uses English. You become a reflection of what you see, hear, and experience every day. If you are surrounded by people, sounds, and media in your native language, your brain naturally stays in that comfort zone. But when you fill your environment with English, through music, books, videos, podcasts, and conversations, your brain begins to adapt to it as something familiar rather than foreign. The process of learning a language becomes easier not because it suddenly becomes simple, but because your environment constantly reminds your mind that English is a part of your daily life. The environment you create influences your motivation and consistency. When you wake up and hear an English podcast, read a short paragraph in English, or see English words around your room, your mind stays engaged with the language. This continuous exposure keeps you connected. Even when you are not actively studying, it builds immersion, the same kind of environment that allows people who live abroad to learn faster. They don't become fluent just because of talent. They become fluent because they live in a space where English is not an option but a necessity. You can recreate that kind of environment no matter where you are. It's about what you choose to include in your daily routine. Your environment also includes the people around you. If you spend time with others who speak or learn English, you naturally pick up their words, accents, and expressions. Conversations with other learners or native speakers push you to use what you know and challenge you to improve. If you stay surrounded by people who never use English, you might hesitate to practice, fearing that you'll sound strange or be judged. But when your social circle includes people who share your learning goals, English becomes a normal part of communication. You start to see it not as a subject to study, but as a tool to connect. Technology makes it easier than ever to shape your environment. You can change your phone's language settings to English, follow English-speaking creators on social media, and watch movies or series with English subtitles. These small changes transform ordinary activities into learning opportunities. Every time you read a caption, understand a dialogue, or look up a new word, you strengthen your skills without even noticing. Surrounding yourself with English also helps you think in the language. Over time, you stop translating everything in your head and begin to understand words by meaning, not by translation. That shift is one of the biggest signs of true fluency. A supportive environment doesn't just expose you to English, it inspires you to keep going, seeing progress in others, hearing success stories, and engaging in communities where people share the same goals gives you the energy to continue. It reminds you that learning English is not something you do alone, but something you build through connection, habit, and the atmosphere you create around yourself. Reflection turns effort into growth because it allows you to understand what you have learned, what still challenges you, and how you can improve. Many people study English for months or even years without real progress because they never stop to think about what is actually working. They follow the same routine, repeat the same mistakes, and move forward without direction. Reflection changes that. It transforms random practice into purposeful learning. When you take time to review your actions, to look back at what you did well and what you could do better, you begin to see patterns in your progress. Those patterns help you focus on what truly matters instead of wasting time on things that don't bring results. Reflecting on your learning helps you recognize your strengths. Maybe you realize that you understand spoken English better than you thought, or that your writing has improved since last month. These small observations give you confidence. They remind you that your effort is paying off, even if you haven't reached fluency yet. At the same time, reflection also shows you your weaknesses. It might reveal that you struggle with pronunciation, that you forget vocabulary quickly, or that you hesitate too long before speaking. Seeing these weaknesses is not a sign of failure. It is a chance to focus your energy where it's needed most. Without reflection, you might keep repeating the same mistakes unconsciously, but with it you learn how to correct them. Reflection also teaches you awareness. When you speak English, do you notice which words make you pause? When you listen, do you pay attention to which accents or phrases confuse you? This kind of self-observation helps you grow faster because it keeps your mind active during learning. Instead of studying mechanically, you become involved in your own progress. You stop learning blindly and start learning with purpose. After every practice session, a few minutes of reflection, thinking about what you understood, what felt difficult, and what you want to try next, can make a big difference in how deeply you learn. Keeping a journal or log in English is one of the best ways to practice reflection. Writing about what you learned that day, how you felt while studying, or which new words you used helps you organize your thoughts. It also allows you to see long-term progress when you look back after weeks or months. You may be surprised to find that sentences you once struggled to write now come easily, or that grammar rules that confused you before now feel natural. This visible record of improvement builds motivation and proves that growth is happening, even when it feels slow. Reflection is also about celebrating small wins. Language learning can be tiring, and without recognition, it's easy to lose motivation. Taking time to notice that you understood a full podcast, read an article without translation, or spoke for 5 minutes without hesitation keeps your enthusiasm alive. Each small success adds emotional strength, reminding you why you started and showing you that your effort truly matters.